The reframing of resilience is really critical in this conversation. And as I mentioned, the sort of interconnectivity of climate and racial equity. So when we're working on one, we're working on the other. And too often the environmental and climate movements have disconnected the work from people, especially people who have suffered for centuries due to systemic racism.
You know, Flint has a long history of disinvestment. It's a predominantly Black community. The poverty rates are high. And so post-water crisis, there was a lot of money put into programs, but not necessarily the aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced that caused some of the problems that Flint has. And so years of infrastructure neglect has caused problems specifically related to public health, the water crisis and the lead in water. But what Flint has also done is named racism a public health crisis. And so we identify that this structural racism is a huge part of the problem and the reason why we're here today. But we've got to take these pockets of programs and services and put them together in a comprehensive resilience plan. And that's what I'm hoping to do. A lot of times we look for community support by saying, hey, let's all meet at this scary, intimidating building and talk about what your needs are. In my opinion, that's just not the way to go about it. So you go to places where people organically gather and you start conversations. This is another reason why it's extremely important to have diverse staff, so you can send the right people to the right places to ask the right questions and be able to pull the right information.
So one of the key tools that we utilized during our development of our climate action plan and our resilience strategy was deliberative forums, which really, pull people together and have the ability of diverse viewpoints and differing opinions to have a conversation in small groups, which was really effective, I think, in terms of bringing in a variety of voices.
One opportunity I can think of immediately is sort of a very archaic plan, but the hazard mitigation plan, where right now it's still, very much structured around what we've already seen and thinking about how we're going to mitigate against those disruptions, rather than bringing in the climate science, rather than bringing in the social equity and thinking more proactively. There's a real opportunity in using that document, whether you create a standalone resilience document or integrate resilience into that mandated document, which will help local governments be able to identify lots of different sources of funding for implementation. You can bring in EPA funding, you can bring in FEMA funding, you can bring in flood mitigation assistance, you can bring in all these different sources of funding into this one mandated document, rather than having to create 6 different separate documents that also align with the 6 different funding strategies.
You don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And we need to put that lens on the way we build our own programs. Make sure that they are easily expandable. So when we do have those opportunities for funding, that we're ready to go, that we don't have to try to pull together a plan to make something happen.
It's important to have somebody that can serve as an integrator. And is able to work across the silos and the different departments within city government, but also to have connections to other sectors. And so building cross-department as well as cross-sector collaboration is really critical, because while we're, the 4 of us are having this conversation, 95% of city government is thinking about, their particular activity and role that they are charged with within the civil service, right? Likewise in the advocacy space, so if you're a health advocate, are you necessarily a housing advocate? Are you necessarily an environmental advocate, right? So like the ability to connect dots between sectors, between departments, that's not natural. And so that's really one of the things that, I've discovered in this role, that it's critical to have an integrator and a person that has the ability to kind of bridge and connect dots and bring folks together.